Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Linder. I'm the VP of Analytics and Machine Learning at Jobvite, and thank you for joining the Too Talented presentation today. So on a quick recap of what Summer to Evolve is going to talk about, we've got our two guests, Daniel Mintz and Jason Pistulka, and we're going to be talking about analytics in the TA space. So before we get there, just a quick review of our Summer to Evolve series here. So we are in the 12th week of this. So tons of sessions, tons of great content, and we've been having a great time providing it to everyone this entire summer. And it's really, really sad that if Summer to Evolve is starting to end, then that means that summer must also be ending. So I personally am very disappointed about that. Where have we been? We've covered a host of topics and really the entire spectrum of the TA space, and then we're wrapping up in analytics this week. So for what's going on this week, we've got, of course, our Too Talented that we're all in attendance on today, and tomorrow is going to be our final day of Summer to Evolve, and that will be focusing on a demo of our next-gen analytics and looking at how to drive better business outcomes with data-driven recruiting. So join in tomorrow, same time, and enjoy that presentation. For all the other presentations, feel free to go to thesummertoevolve.com. All of those are stored there, and you can pick up the recordings and watch any session that you might not have been able to make. And a popular question that's coming up that many people have been asking are, whose feet are those? And I'm proud to say that those are my feet. And so that's exactly where I'm sitting right now once I leave the house. Of course, that's not at all true. So let's introduce our guests. Daniel Mintz, he's our first guest for Too Talented today. He's the Chief Data Evangelist at Looker, which is now part of the Google family. He's had previous roles in a variety of analytics companies and spaces. And so Daniel, say hi to the group.
Hi to the group.
Perfect. All right, so summer favorites is something that we've done in all of these sessions. So you gotta tell me about the camping. So is camping just a regular favorite of yours, or is there like a particular favorite camping experience that you had?
I mean, that's how I grew up doing summer vacations. Like that was our go-to. You know, we would, I grew up in New Jersey and we'd pack up the car every summer and go for 2 weeks to Vermont or Maine. And there's just nothing better than on a summer morning waking up and it's like cold enough that you still need a sweatshirt and, you know, you start a fire and have, well, now some coffee, then some probably hot chocolate. But yeah, that just like that screams perfect summer vacation to me.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Thanks, Dana, for joining us. Next guest, Jason Pistulka. Jason's the AVP of TA Operations for HCA Healthcare company. Had many prior roles in the HR space, and he actually also teaches HR at both undergraduate and graduate level. So a true professional and expert in the space. Super excited to have him. Jason, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So I don't mean to double dip here, but I'm also going to ask you about Ethiopia because it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I happen to have 3 children adopted from Ethiopia, so this got a lot of room in my heart that it's taken over, and so love to go back to Ethiopia and visit some of my children's family and the country. It's just a beautiful place, beautiful people.
Awesome.
That sounds much fancier than camping in Vermont.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys both for being here. So now to move into the, I guess before we get into the meat of the presentation, let me do a quick intro myself. Again, VP Analytics Machine Learning at Jobvite. So my efforts are focused on how do we make Jobvite the most data-driven, analytics-driven company that we can, ensuring that all of our customers have the data easily accessible, shareable, findable, without making it a heavy lift each time, right? How do we just put it in the right place and allow people to maximize and get the most out of what we need? So that is definitely our goal, and that is what we will work hard to every day to make sure that that happens. And now to the I guess the meat of the presentation and kind of talk about this. Jason, I'd like to start with you and think about analytics, right? That's the analytics in the TA space is the theme of today, but analytics is a broad term and everybody wants analytics and wants more of it. But what does that really mean? So when you think about analytics, what does that term even mean to you?
Well, in the space of operations in recruiting, I really think of truly understanding what's going on. So getting down to a detailed level, enough data that that you can analyze the process, the experience, and to identify areas of which there's opportunity to make positive change.
Awesome. So Daniel, for you, you build tools that help people look at analytics. So what's your general definition or thought of analytics?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that you're asking about analytics rather than data is right on. I think data people like myself and others on this call sometimes get very enamored with data itself. But the reality is for most normal human beings, data is not very exciting. They don't want data, they want answers, they want insight, they want knowledge. And so analytics is about that, that transition process of taking the raw material, the data, and figuring out how to use it to drive business processes, business operations, and fundamentally how to answer people's questions in a way that lets them do their job better.
Yeah, excellent point. So when you think about that, when you want to start being more analytics driven, less focusing on just the data, what are the first couple of steps, right? So I'm new to my role, or I want to get more into analytics in general. What's the step that I take to go find that data, to go analyze it, to make it meaningful so I can tell that story?
I mean, I would say the first step that you should take has nothing to do with the data. The first step that you should take is talk to your customer, whether that's an internal customer or an external customer, but go talk to the people who actually want answers from the data, who are asking you for stuff, right? And say, what is it that you're trying to do? What is the question that you're trying to answer? The business question. Don't tell me, oh, I need to see, number of applicants by month, by region for the last, 6 months. Like that, no. Like, I'm a data person. I know what's in the database, and I know, what that data means and what's available and what's hard to get, what's easy to get. I know all that stuff. So leave that to me to translate your business question into a data question. I don't know what the business question that you need to answer is. So make me understand that. Make me understand what success would look like. What are you trying to understand? Oh, we want to see if there's seasonality to the way that applications come in and whether that varies by region. Great, okay. So, if I come back and say that there is seasonality, but it's only in certain regions, what are you going to do with that information? Oh, well, we'll change our ad spending, okay, great. Now I have a clear understanding of what you're actually trying to accomplish. And now I can say, well, what if I was able to give you a report that showed this, or an analysis that showed this? Would that be helpful? That validates, that what I'm going to deliver is actually going to have value before I even do any work. And so I think that's actually what the process should look like. And too often it's goes backwards. There's nothing that makes me sadder than delivering an analysis or a dashboard or whatever, and someone goes, oh, yeah, no, this is great, thank you. That means that they are never, ever going to look at it again, right? The way that you know that you've delivered the right thing is they go, oh, that's really interesting, but like, could we slice it by state rather than by region? Oh yeah, we could do that, right? So you want those follow-up questions. That means you've answered their first question, given them an idea, and they've got a follow-up. That's what you want, not, oh yeah, this is great, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of a story that I had a junior analyst that was really struggling with trying to get the reports built the right way, because people were asking for what you were saying was the poor use case in that example, and which would always be very frustrating to him. He wanted to get the data sorted or organized in the way that he felt was most optimal. And so I told him what to do is make 2 reports, build one in the way that you want to, and then the one in the way that they want to look at it, and just show the 2 side by side, and they're going to very quickly buy in on that and say, okay, this is the much better way to look at the data, right? I don't want to see the million row Excel spreadsheet here that I can't do anything with. I want to see the way that that you formatted it. But sometimes you have to point that out just to show that there is a better, different way to look at things.
Yeah, there's no substitute for actually putting the product you've built in people's hands so that they can actually interact with it.
Absolutely. So Jason, how do you get your team and all of your TA professionals to think like that? What's the process to do that, and how do you maintain that level of engagement to make sure that they are using data in an effective way?
That's the $1,000,000 question. So we have a very large team. So we have nearly 20 directors of recruiting. And so we've really gone down a path of evolution, and I think it's a pretty natural evolution, where our data and dashboards that we're building started with, really rear view mirrors, what happened, and then we started to pull in now how or why did it happen that way, and then we stepped up into what's happening right now, and now taking the step to what should we be acting upon right now, real time, to affect the downstream of the future rear view mirror. And so we've worked more and more to try to deliver the data in a way that's far more digestible. And it's one of the problems when you're a data person. I love a flat file. Send me a flat file, let me work it, right? But I'm the rarity. And so what we really need to do is to build some of the thinking processes into the dashboards themselves, so they're just more evident to people, and then walk through and train them on, here is how you should use this in coaching your employees and evaluating your marketing spend, all of that kind of stuff, versus we did about 2/3 baked and then let you bake the rest of the way. And the challenge that you have between there is everybody wants something a little different, and trying to get the organization to say, this is the methodology, this is the view we're going to do as an organization to get everybody on that same page, so you don't have 20 different versions of what you're trying to build. That's probably the biggest challenge, and we've worked a lot beyond TA, just in HR in general, to say, here's the methodology we've adopted, here's why we've adopted it, here's the known flaws in that methodology, and we're willing to accept that. And every methodology usually has some flaw versus another. So
yeah, that's a really good point. You've got to draw the line in the sand somewhere, right? And if you can't get buy-in on how to measure things, then it's always going to be different and therefore not really measurable, right? Because we've got tangential data points that don't make a lot of sense when compared to one another.
Well, and when you put this in front of CFO, they pull out their calculator really quick and try to test your numbers, right? So if they don't understand the methodology behind it, really quickly they're telling you your data is wrong.
Right. Yes. So that's a good segue. So how do you separate the analysis part of it versus the sharing and predictable components of it, right? So here's what I need to look at to go function on today's world versus here's something I need to go dig into because I need to understand it a little bit more, or this doesn't look right. I need to make sure that this is telling me what it says it's telling me.
Well, I guess first and foremost, we have those in separate dashboards, because in the making of the sausage, we don't necessarily want the business leaders to be into that for a number of reasons, but it's up to us to manage our individual employees. And a lot of that gets down to individual recruiters and how effectively they're managing their funnel and all those kinds of things. So having different dashboards that display those different views is really important. And then for us, really, we're driving towards a scorecard ultimately that it even bypass the manager, where the recruiter themselves can log in and it's saying, these are the things you need to do today that are out of SLA to get yourself back into compliance, versus having the manager play middleman. So trying to get that data to an actionable data that a recruiter can just look at and act upon is really where we're moving towards.
And so you mentioned the term SLA, which is typically associated and affiliated with operations roles, right? Specifically on the technical side in a lot of cases. Does bringing something that into an HR team or a TA team does that concern them at all, or does it make them feel too mechanical, or have you had good success with that?
Well, when we talk about SLAs, we always talk about them, and in fact, in our goals, the SLA is under the category of candidate experience, because the time that it takes you to do everything impacts a candidate. The time that it takes you to do that is time that they have to apply for other jobs, to interview for other jobs, to get competing offers, all of that kind of stuff. So when we talk about you're not meeting your SLAs, what we're really talking about is you're delivering a poor candidate experience. And here's how I can show that. It's hard for business leaders, for recruiters, or for anybody to argue against that fact. And there's been good studies that have been done that show the longer it takes for you to make that hire, the better the chance is that they're going to accept an offer after they start with you and go to another competitor, mostly in the lower wage jobs where 50 cents or $1 an hour is what it takes for people to make a decision.
Interesting. So Daniel, Looker builds these tools, these analytics capabilities for a variety of customers, and Jobvite included. And what are you seeing that is something that we all should be thinking about, right? What are the Jason mentioned the scorecards, but what are the other things that you're seeing as the more cutting edge companies are doing to manage their analytics?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, a couple of things. So, I think for folks who aren't familiar with Looker is an analytics platform that sort of sits on top of a company's data, on their database, data warehouse, whatever, and makes it possible for anybody in the organization to ask questions of that data and hopefully get reliable metrics back. And so, I think two big trends that we're seeing. One is about what this is a stupid term, sorry, this is just what the industry calls it, but embedded analytics, which is just means rather than providing analytics to your internal colleagues, it's about providing analytics to your partners, your suppliers, your customers, somebody else, some other entity. And so we're seeing tons of growth there because there's just this expectation that if I'm using if I have a business relationship with somebody, they should be able to give me data about how that business relationship is going. So if I'm, an e-commerce site and I have a bunch of suppliers, like I should be able to see how my stuff is selling and which brands are most popular. If I'm a recruiting sourcing, firm, I should be able to see, down the pipeline, are the candidates that I'm referring to this company actually getting hired? I should be able to see the sort of success rate there so that I can adjust what I'm doing to be more effective. So I think we're seeing tons of growth there. And then I think the other thing, to Jason's point about SLAs and giving people actionable intelligence, is that one of the most effective ways to help people actually take action on that intelligence is to not force them to come to the analytics tool. So the ability to take data and inject that into other tools and workflows that people already have is so powerful in getting them to go, oh, right, yeah, I have 3 candidates who are out of SLA. I need to get back to them and let them know that we're not going to go forward with them. If that hits you in Slack or Teams or Google Chat or whatever every morning, rather than you're having to remember to go log into your dashboard and see that you're out of SLA, oh my God, a huge, huge, huge jump in how many people actually take action on that. So, the ability to push data out to chat apps, to CRMs like Salesforce, to TA tools, to people's phones, to email, like all of that stuff is just incredibly powerful in going to where people already are and getting them to take action, rather than requiring them to come to you to remember to take action. It's just one more thing, and we all have 18 tools that we're using all the time, and we're switching between them. So it's just easy to let one be on the 17th tab, and you just never remember to go over to it. So if it comes and finds you and says, hey, Jason, you have some stuff to do, can you just take care of these? Like, that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's building into that process of just your natural workflow, right? That way you're not creating a new workflow. You're optimizing your existing workflows. So I think something that's really interesting about Looker is that like alerting capabilities too, right? So how do you set your high and low watermarks and notify people on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it, right? It's like sometimes what I want is for the data to come find me every, I want my sourcing report every, Monday morning at 9 a.m. and I don't want to have to come get that. And I certainly don't want to have to wait for the database to load. I just want it to be waiting in my email inbox. That's great. And so scheduled reports and, things like that are really important. But like, alerting based on thresholds or deviation from a norm, like those are really, that means something's wrong. Something has changed, right? So like, I don't want an alert that says you have 0 candidates out of SLA every Monday morning. Like that is not useful to me. But if I get above 2, I do want it to remind me, oh, you're neglecting this duty, right? And so I think, it's not just about coming in and letting, putting it in my face regardless. That just, becomes that same background noise and really easy to ignore. So it's really about like, tell me when there's something I need to pay attention to. I always use the example like, if you've ever peeked into a commercial airline's cockpit, right? There are more dials and gauges than any human being could possibly pay attention to. And that's on purpose. Like that is because there are a lot of things to keep track of, but the pilots are not, looking around and like trying to like, oh, yep, okay, that's within line. That's okay, that's right. Yeah, like that's not how they fly. They know that if something goes wrong, they're going to get a big flashing red light and a beep that says, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, right? So like you can have, a very straightforward dashboard. You can have the dashboard in your car that has 3 gauges. And so it's easy to glance at and say, okay, I'm going too fast. I'll just slow down a little. Or you can have an enormous one that's full of different metrics. But if you have that, you have to be really good about highlighting when something needs somebody's attention rather than counting on them to notice, oh, hey, we're almost out of fuel. Maybe I should pay attention to that. No, big flashing red light.
That's a great example. I love I love that one. I had not heard the cockpit example before, but that's fantastic. So think about that, Jason. What are you guys working on right now that you feel like is taking you to the next level of analytics? What are those exciting things that you've got earmarked for, the next 6 to 12 months?
A lot of it is what we've just been talking about. So moving the data to the point of being prescriptive, getting that in front of people. So we're turning on some RPAs to start pushing this stuff out to people via different mediums, email, text, etc., to take action on. At the same time, where our whole HRIS system is being swapped out and with one that's completely mobile enabled. So they'll be able to not only get that message on their phone, but act on that message in their phone and try to make that more of a real time versus I got to remember to do this when I go back to my desk. So it's a combination of the data, the delivery, and the ability to take action on that data more easily. And we keep referring it to here as a consumer grade experience for our hiring managers, and that's really what we're trying to get to.
So you mentioned predictive. What are some of the predictive metrics that you guys are looking at?
Some of it is how many candidates you need to see in what period of time before you're going to effectively make a hire. So we're trying to get predictively to be able to know when to turn marketing on and off. And some of that is enabled with some third-party vendors that like AppFeeder that we use that can basically count on every rec, like how many hit to know that at that point on would be the typical number we need to make a hire and reduce spend and move that spend to other jobs that haven't gotten that same level of apply flow, things of that nature.
Awesome. So when you're doing those predictive components, is that are you doing? I think the audience might have some interest in this. Is that complicated math? Is it easy math? Is it just some process you're putting in place, or how are you going about calculating those?
I'll be able to answer that once we have it actually working the way we want. So gotcha. It's the technology that they have is making it a lot easier. And for us to be able to, we have to feed data back to them so they can tell the trigger of what point did we get the applicant, and at what point did we make that hire, so they can start to do their own analysis on it. So a lot of it's coming out of our vendors, and we're just feeding data back to them to be able to activate that.
Yeah, so I was thinking in my head at the same time I was asking you, and I think a lot of times predictive can seem complicated, but it doesn't have to be, right? So if you want to think about something like a time to hire stat, and really if we went to look historically, that I can hire a business analyst and it's going to take me on average 45 days to do that, and I need 50 candidates to make that happen. There's not a lot of complicated math to go figure that out historically and then apply that going forward based on where you are now, right? And so I think sometimes predictive sounds challenging and complicated and something that you can't do because you're not a PhD data scientist, but in reality, a lot of this can be accomplished just with a little bit of thought. So Daniel, what's on the horizon that that you're really excited about, just in the analytics and data world in general? What are the things in the next couple of years that you think will really impact our lives just broadly from a data perspective?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not going to say AI and machine learning because I don't generally believe them. To Jason's point, like, or to your point, Zach, actually, I think like a lot of the time putting the right number in front of the right person at the right time is enough. Like, you don't need that person doesn't need fancy AI to figure out what's going on. They're the right person. They look at that number, they go, oh, that's way off. Let me figure out what's going wrong, right? And so, I think more often than not, people get overly excited about, sort of the hype cycle, and AI is certainly part of that right now, especially if you can make it work with blockchain. I'm excited to see what the next thing that people get super excited about is, but so that I can, poo-poo it. But I think, in terms of things that actually are exciting to me, I mean, I think, the cloud databases and cloud data warehouses are legitimately amazing. They just make a task that has bedeviled programmers for, as long as there's been programming, really, really easy, really cheap. They can process just unthinkable amounts of data fast and easily. And so I think that sort of raw accessibility of data opens up a lot of opportunities. And then I think, also I think the sort of business application world has sort of committed now to the idea of building a best-in-class stack, rather than, you go buy a set of tools that it's all vertically integrated from one vendor. I think we're moving to a place where people recognize that the future is like, oh, I need this database and this analytics tool and this, sourcing tool and this TA automation tool, and I want to be able to combine all those. And so I think the commitment to that means that we're just going to see this acceleration of, sort of really good APIs and, good automation tools, things like MuleSoft, and, that let these tools talk to each other, and then also let us bring the data together from all those different tools to get insight that in the past would have been just really hard because you'd have to download the data from all the different tools and then munge it together, by hand. And so I think the ability to really bring data together from lots of different parts of the organization and have it fit together nicely, that's where the real strategic insights that have been locked away come from. And so that seems stupid and simple and like, surely that must be a solved problem, but it's really not. And I think as we make real progress on it, we're going to see real advances and things unlocked that have seemed too hard in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think connectors are going to be the key, right? Because you're going to be able to reach out and grab fully formed, well-constructed business logic layer data and plug it immediately in from all of your vendors, right? So all of those 17 apps that you mentioned that we all use on a daily basis, how do we look across those 17 apps in a way that's valuable for us without having to look at 15 different reporting tools and manage that? So I think that's an area that's super interesting to me and us on how do we create connectors like that for Jobvite, right? How do we make our data available and well formed and structured to be easily accessible and usable in a variety of ways? Jason, what are you seeing in that sphere as far as connection? My guess is the amount of data that you're not only producing yourself is dramatically increasing, but how much you're consuming from those around the periphery of the products that you're working with.
Yeah, I'll talk more about my desires than what we're doing.
Sure.
And the augmenting our data in our CRM is really something that I've wanted to be able to do in a significant way. And getting to AI and machine learning, what we really need is, because we get such unstructured data from our candidates through their applications and their parsing, I need a system that can say, I can look at this candidate and I can tell when they put Mercy Hospital, that they can tell the difference between Mercy Hospital in Miami and Mercy of Ohio, or Doctors Hospital or Good Samaritan, or all these different things. Because if we could do that, and I can combine that with American Hospital Association data, with Medicare data and patient satisfaction data, now when I'm sourcing, I can say, I need a director of an ER who's come from a trauma center with at least 500 beds and that had patient sat scores at this level and an acuity rating of a hospital of this level. All of that data exists out there, but it requires first that I know exactly which hospital we're talking about, and that's a big challenge. The data could all exist. You can bounce off of background services and find out who actually lived in Miami, even though it was 5 years ago of the two people. I know it's possible, but man, if I can master that, the value of the data that we can bring in our systems, because today our recruiters recognize their local hospitals. I mean, we're in 21 different states, 185 hospitals, so they know their local competitor. But as soon as somebody applies from outside their market, they don't know, and they kind of treat them all the same. And if we knew that, boy, this came from a top-notch hospital with great patient outcomes, great patient satisfaction scores, all this kind of stuff, we would prioritize those candidates higher, and we would call them first. And I think it would significantly enhance our ability to source and to sell that candidate into the hiring manager, because now I know all this stuff about this candidate that I could have not known otherwise, without having to individually research every candidate that I see. That kind of data power would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between the distance between easy and, or excuse me, let me say that again. The distance between possible and easy is enormous, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw a great analysis that somebody did of the data that the government released on small businesses that got loans through I think it was the PPP, and they found that Philadelphia was spelled 51 different ways.
Yep.
So that's what happens when you give people free text, right?
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we don't want to force them into too much structure. It takes too long to apply, and then they drop out. So
yeah.
it's the balance. And we talk about this all the time. You know, data quality is an issue we always battle with. And so we're looking at some options too of even how we gather data on the front end that may help affect that in like our college recruiting. I found Texas Tech, I think it was, we had like 37 different variations of Texas Tech for just 2 years worth of nurse hires. So trying to get that exact as to which campus, and is it really Texas Tech or is that Tennessee Tech? Because when they put TTU, suddenly you're in a mess, right? So it's all that kind of information.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's awesome. Jason, I was taking all kinds of notes on that because I think that I mean that's the sweet spot, right? It's how do you blend the capability with the ease of use, right? And the you don't want to add extra steps, but there are ways you can do that in a easy to do way, right? So you put TTU and you're confirming that, hey, you went to Texas Tech University and here's my profile, and yes, that looks fantastic. And if not, I can go make the edit as me as
Yep.
the owner of the data. And so and then also, like, if you think about the data on the collection side versus, so you might collect really dirty data and you don't want to put dirty data or disparate data into your clean database. How do you put that AI ML layer in between to go through the cleansing, just so that way you can still do it on an unstructured, unformatted way on the import side, and then when you drop it into the database, it can be cleansed and ready to go and ready for use. All right, so a couple minutes left here before it's time for us to sign off. What are like the parting thoughts? So Daniel, I'll start with you. What are you from an analytics perspective thinking about right now that it's the important thing that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to repeat myself. Luckily, you all have only heard me this once, so you don't know that I'm repeating myself. But like, I tend to just focus on the fundamentals, right? Like, have data that is meaningful to people, presented to them in a way that makes sense, that goes to where they are, rather than making them come to it. Make sure, as Jason pointed out, that you've agreed on what your key business metrics definitions are, and you're not letting each person make it up on their own. And really focus on the user, focus on the who is the consumer of the data and what are they trying to get from it, rather than focusing on the neat tricks that you can do with the data. I think Jason said this in passing, but it really resonates with me that people are being trained by consumer applications, and so those consumer applications, by their very nature, are really easy to use. They're often fun to use. They're they don't demand a lot from you, and I think enterprise B2B software absolutely needs to continue to take the cues from those applications. That that should be the expectation for all of the tools, the software that we're using, not just the consumer stuff.
Awesome, fantastic. I really appreciate it. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when I speak to groups, a lot of people get overwhelmed. They say that they look at all their dashboards and all the stuff that we've built, and they say, well, what if we don't have the resources for that? How do we do this? And it's not a binary all or nothing, right? So many of the things that we built because we started with ideation and exploration in data. So we have some really impressive audit dashboards that we've built that actually audit the quality of our recruiters' work. But all of that started by manually auditing recs. I started going in and I said, here's 100 recs with different recruiters. And I came back to the business and said, here's the percentage of this that's wrong. Here's the percentage of that's wrong. And I built my case as to why we need to measure this and why it's worthy of us spending some more money on it, and even invested in audit staff to do these things. And so, anecdotal data is valuable if you gather enough of it, right? And you begin to build a certain mass that you can influence people to make a change. So, I would say don't get too caught up on, I need to come up with this big fancy, mostly when you look at things like Looker and it's really, really cool. But if you ever want a Looker or anything like it, you got to convince the business that there's so much potential that's being lost out there, that if we were doing better analysis of the data, that we could uncover that and capture that potential, and it really builds your business case for you.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point. I've talked about if I wanted to make a pencil, and one pencil, it would cost me like $100,000, because I have no idea how to go make a pencil. You got to figure out how to get graphite or whatever the lead of a pencil is now, and how do you form wood around it. Like, it would just take forever, right? But if you figure out how to make it, you can figure out how to turn those things out at pennies or less than pennies a piece, right? And it's that same process. You got to understand beginning to end everything that goes into it, and then you can really start to mass produce in lots of different ways, and then change colors and better erasers and all kinds of stuff. But you really have to understand beginning to end. All right, guys. Well, it's time for us to close this out. So thank you so much for joining. I am losing my capability to run the screen very well. I can no longer see my mouse. So I'm hopeful that I'm hitting the right buttons to make this last few slides go by. So if anyone has more questions, you can watch more about all the exciting products that Jobvite has around analytics, AI, machine learning, all of the above. And just a quick reminder, tomorrow, absolute last day, so last chance to enjoy the Summer Tool and Ball session, and that will be a demo of the analytics tools that Jobvite provides. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. Really appreciate it. It's been fantastic, and thanks again to Daniel and Jason, and we hope everyone learned something. We'll see you later. Have a great rest of the day.